We're the peninsula area of Washington. So it's the far west corner of Washington. I think there's more up top, but we hit the peninsula and a little bit down. It's like mid-section of the west side. And we're right on the ocean as well, parts of the areas, the boundaries. And I think there's a lot of military base, that's what it was. There's a military base. I served on a military base area, and that was incredibly awesome. I love that so much. And so there's Navy, there's Army, and then there's, I think there was an Air Force base. I never served around that one though, but I served in the Navy and an Army base area. And so there's a lot of military influence up there, and so you have a lot of transient people, people going in and out because of orders and stuff. And so there's also, as a mission, I don't know how many other missions do this. I've gotten a lot of on and off things. I think we still don't have iPads. And every other mission that I've heard of had them, and so I was shocked when I came home and found out everyone else had iPads and we still hadn't. And so I'm very proud of that fact, though. It was very like old school. And then we had knocking 5 to 7. That was very a Washington Tacoma thing. I know they do it other places as well, but our mission takes a lot of pride in that and the fact that we knock 5 to 7 every day. No matter how dark, how rainy, how stormy it is outside. And I kind of love that about it. It's a lot of tenacity. It takes a lot of grit to do that. And I think a lot of the people that get called to the Washington Tacoma Mission have that grit and that tenacity. It's kind of a common factor among us. And let's see. I know that when I left, we had a stake split because it had grown so much. So I know that even in the time frame that I had been there, the church grew a lot. I'm not completely sure on statistics, but I know that we do baptize quite a bit. Not compared to South America or anything, but we do good. We hold our own. You can be pretty satisfied with knowing that you've got a couple of baptisms under your belt when you leave. And so it's pretty cool because it's like the fine line between, somewhere in South America where you're baptizing just left and right. And I can only assume that after a while it kind of gets, normal. You normalize it. And so I don't know how often you can see the hard work and the miracles that it takes to get towards a baptism. Whereas somewhere in Europe where you get one baptism or something, some statistic like that, and so you get overly frustrated. And I think Tacoma hits the mark between those two where it's, you're going to baptize, but you really got to work for it. I mean, it's not just going to fall in your lap, but you should expect that it will happen as well. And so I loved that about our mission, that when you worked hard, you saw results. And so something I ran into a lot with investigators or just knocking on doors and finding people was a word of wisdom issues. And a lot of that was because people had disabilities or mental health issues, which they have a mental hospital over in Lakewood. And so that was very common to find people who had gotten out and kind of settled in that area. And so that was pretty common. And so you had to work with the fact that people had a lot of past trauma. That was the same for military as well. Past trauma, and you're able to discuss the atonement with them because of that. And the ways that keeping the word of wisdom will help them in their lives. And they have a hard time believing that because that's all they knew, and it helps numb whatever pain they have from, whether it's disabilities or rough upbringing, all those sorts of things. There's incredible, and that's the thing, it was so diverse. You know, some, even if I was in the same area, the same technically city, you could bounce between streets that have heroin and, you know, up the road, and every single person on that road is a hardcore drug addict, not just like a little bit, but like hardcore, could barely function, weren't in the right mind ever, to people who were highly successful, you know, 10 minutes up the road. And so you saw a lot of diversity in that fact too. And so you kind of have to be able to bounce back and forth between the two concepts and find the individual needs of each area, rather than assuming that because you're in Washington, you have a lot of drug problems, or because you're in the nice part of Washington, you don't have too many problems. So it was definitely interesting, because I think it was a good range of all the above, of all the different types of people and classes that you could find. And so it was interesting to see the influence of drugs and stuff in that area. And so being able to talk to people who had kind of gotten out of it, were looking for something more, that happened a lot. People wanted more than these mind-numbing drugs that they were taking. And so we were always there, ready to talk to them. I preached my gospel, and I took everything that it said very seriously. I took everything that was in the Book of Mormon very seriously. And my mission president's rules, I took them very seriously. And because of that, I slowly over time was able to take the rules that I had and then expand to, you know, okay, so like this is our schedule, this is what we're supposed to do. But without breaking rules, or without, you know, being disobedient in any form, what does the Spirit tell us to do? And I learned that with one companion in particular, because we butted heads a lot. And I realized that there was like the logistically right thing to do. Go and knock on doors, or go and spend time at this member's home. And we'd write it in our planners, and that would be like the good use of time. But every morning before we actually went out, we would make sure to pray, and then we'd get out in our car. We'd pray again. And in the middle of the day, we had plans, and we'd stop and we'd pray again. And we just were constantly changing our plans because of that. And so I wish that earlier in my mission, I had learned to follow the Spirit every time, every second of every day, because you still, as you're doing the right things, you're being led by the Spirit. But it was just really incredibly cool to pause throughout the day and know your whole job is to help people come into Christ, and they do that through the Spirit. And so if you're listening to the Spirit, you're always going to be led exactly where you need to be. And I saw so many miracles because of that, and having faith in that. And so I think having faith in that the Spirit can and will show you where to go every single time. I served October 2014 until April 2016. I served in Elma. I served in Tacoma, Lakewood, Bremerton, and Lacey.